focus on those heavy rains in KwaZulu-Natal this weekend. We can now speak to someone from the eThekwini Metro. The Deputy City Manager, Musa Gumede, is joining us on News at Prime. Mr. Gumede, grateful for your time. Thank you so much for being on the program. Is it your understanding, at least, that the worst is over as far as these rains are concerned? Gareth was just telling us that it is still raining in Durban and surrounds.
Yes, good evening. We hope so. We hope the worst is over, at least for eThekwini. The South African Weather Service has also downgraded the level 10 that we had throughout yesterday. At least now we're going to level 4, which gives hope that the worst is over and the rains are moving further north. We have now got to roll up our sleeves and clean up what has been left behind. We hope the rest, the worst is over right now.
Does the advice for people in low-lying areas to evacuate or move to higher ground, does that still stand tonight?
Well, because the soil is quite soggy, because there's a lot of water in the soil. So there is a high risk of mudslides still. So we advise people that even small amounts of rain can still cause mudslides, although the level has been reduced. Yes, it's still the advice.
How vast, sir, is the area where the concern, the fear around mudslides is a very serious one at this point?
In the last floods, the whole of eThekwini was affected. Almost 89 wards out of 111 wards were affected, so it's difficult to pinpoint an area. But obviously terrains differ. Some were affected but could withstand the water, but some couldn't. The rural areas in the west of eThekwini and the north of eThekwini were hard hit. In these floods, we've noticed that the hardest hit areas have been those along the coast. From lower side of Palito, Umdloti, that area has been the hardest hit as far as we can see right now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are other areas. We've got calls that people in the west of eThekwini, especially in the Nanda area, were also affected. The Umlazi area around Ward 84 was also affected. In the west as well, Ward 19 was affected. So it's not as bad as previously. But the challenge is that our infrastructure was already damaged. Mm-hmm. And there was some work we tried to do to recover, some of it temporary work. Some of that has been washed away as well. So it's almost starting afresh.
To what extent do you think then this latest rain is going to delay the process to rebuild parts of eThekwini that were damaged in April?
Obviously, there could be more work to do. If you look at what happened in Umdloti alone, it's extensive work. Roads washed away, a flat falling down, the dunes have been carved into two. Just that area alone requires a lot of investment to recover. The major routes, some of the roads again washed away. On top of what we already had experienced a month ago. So we require a lot of investment to recover from what has happened in eThekwini.
And what's the latest on the number of people who've been evacuated, or at least those who have sought shelter from government and the city?
In terms of shelter, I am aware of 3 areas where people have requested shelter. It's the wards I just indicated, Ward 19. They require shelter. And then 2 shelters which were already up were flooded. One was Days in the south of eThekwini, in Ward 74. We've had to move those people to Wema Hall because that Days shelter was affected. Another hall in Tlungwayo, in the north, I think that is Ward 54 in the north of eThekwini, also affected, and we're trying to move those to Amau, to Inanda A hall. So those are the people that we have to move right now. Then there are individuals, maybe 5 here and 2 there, that we had to move either to relatives or to other residents in the same vicinity. Obviously, there is Umdloti as well, where the whole building flats carved down. So those are mostly with other residents or with families.
Am I right to say it would be more than the 200 or close to 200 that the Premier Sihle had spoken about earlier?
Yes, 190 of that figure is just one hostel days. They were already at days. 190 of them had to be moved to Wema Hall.
And let's talk about the longer term picture, right? Even after the floods in April, Premier Sihle Mayor Mxolisi Kaunda, as well as President Ramaphosa had said that part of the long-term way in which we're going to have to address the impact of floods in KwaZulu-Natal is around moving people away from areas that are at high risk of flooding, etc. How far are you with the assessment of areas where it simply will no longer be fit for anyone to go and build?
eThekwini has a department called Human Settlements, similar to the provincial department. They work together. There is a war room which was formed by the minister, the MEC, and our deputy mayor, who is the chair of that unit. They meet almost on a daily basis. They share notes. eThekwini has given them the land parcels that we own so that we could find the best suited to deal with and the closest to the areas where people come from. So and that process is ongoing.
Pardon me. Will schools, Mr. Gumede, be open in the affected areas tomorrow?
So far, unless a road is affected and people can't move across, we've not heard of damage to schools. Maybe roads which will force people not to be able to go to schools. But we think things will become back to normal tomorrow, unless in particular areas there are challenges.
Musa Gumede, eThekwini Deputy City Manager, thank you so much for your time, sir. We'll be speaking to you more, no doubt, through the coming days.
Thank you.